Well, this is Jared with Stampede Blues, your Indianapolis Colts post-game wrap. The Colts lost today at home to division rival Tennessee Titans in overtime, 34-31, and the Colts are now 3-5 out of the division unless there's a complete implosion by the Tennessee Titans. And there are three major reasons the Colts lost this game today. The first, I would say, is absolutely the officiating without a shadow of a doubt. There were several plays where the Titan offense would be set and the left tackle, Taylor Lewan, bob his head. That's a false start. Didn't get called. Also, there were also a couple different scenarios where there was a blatant block in the back on that Titan offensive line, not called. Not to mention the lack of that call on it was sort of a bang bang play there on Pascal, but ultimately the defender got there too early. It was defensive pass interference. Pretty standard defensive pass interference there on the Titans there late in the game. So we'll just kind of we'll start off by saying like the officiating was ass. It has been ass. And the reason is ESPN is ruining the NFL because what they've done is they took all the really good officials that used to actually call pretty good games in the NFL and they hired them, pulled them out of officiating, and now they're just talking heads. And if I'm an NFL official, you absolutely do that because the money's a lot better, right? You don't get paid a bunch of money to officiate NFL games, but you get paid a whole lot more money to be a talking head on these networks. And that's why, for the record, if it's capitalism, again, is what is destroying the NFL in my eyes. And then also, I just got done coaching my first season of football at the semi-pro level where the officiating was even worse. And what I came away from is that you have to be undeniable. In all three phases have to be prepared. All three phases have to have a game plan to play 4 quarters at a high level. And it really makes me wonder what's going on in the Colts offensive meeting rooms. And I can go to numbers and tell you, Jonathan Taylor had 11 carries after 3 quarters. He had no carries in the third quarter. He had 5 in the fourth, and they gave him the rock in the overtime. But here's the reality. The Colts are now out of the division, largely going to be playing for a wild card spot. And if you came to me as like Frank Reich and Chris Ballard, you told me you wanted to go out, trade away and mortgage the future of my franchise, bring in this expensive quarterback that you worked with prior, right? So you see Frank Reich's handprints are all over the reason the Colts are 3-5. And Chris Ballard now too. Now he's drafted pretty well. The Colts are clearly capable of like developing talent, and the players seem happy here. And the Colts do have a lot of individuals that are consistently show up and make plays, right? So we can sit here and talk about what we did well, right? We showed today, for the record, I'm so glad that Jonathan Taylor finished the game healthy, but the Colts didn't use him, so that's kind of pointless. Hines, where's he been all year? He was so effective last year, and then he's just gone. Completely out of your offense, especially in a game where you're down to 3 wide receivers. T.Y. Hilton goes down into a concussion protocol when Tannehill went down with a similar hit and missed one play and got to come back in. You know what I mean? So there's some inconsistencies officiating. Let's start with that and say, like, that's shitty. There's nothing you can really do about that. I just told you the most tenured and qualified officials in the NFL are now talking heads, ESPN, Fox. It's their fault, right? It's their fault that those officials would rather like retire, right, and live a life, right, after run around an NFL field, getting yelled at by Olympians for however long. And then the Colts game plan, I felt like had to be run the ball, right? And it feels like every time Jonathan Taylor touches the ball, he does something with the ball. So if I'm a reporter and I'm questioning Frank Reich, the first question I ask is I want to know, is Jonathan Taylor injured? And then after I ask that question, is Nyheim Hines injured? You don't have depth at wide receiver. Nyheim Hines, I believe, was your leading or number 2 receiver last year. Where's his involvement in your offense? However, Jonathan Taylor, Pittman, absolutely outstanding. Not a great day out of Carson Wentz, but one of the things I don't do is I don't blame quarterbacks for coaching errors, So everybody can come at me and say, but Jared, he stared down his receiver. No, you put him in a bad position repeatedly over the course of a game. He's going to make mistakes. You want to talk about it? I play quarterback. I coach quarterbacks. I'm an offensive coordinator and a play caller. What do you want from me? Dead honest, it's on the play caller. It's on the head coach. It's on the GM. The personnel at wide receiver is ass. The depth on this team is ass. The play calling, specifically in crunch time, ass. And then, above all things, injuries are a massive problem the Colts have that I just don't see. I don't look around the league and I get it. The Ravens are injured, but that's like they're injured at the running back position because they're primarily a rushing team. So that makes sense to me that they're on like their seventh running back, right? The Colts have arguably this. I really think that Derrick Henry is more of a one-cut downhill runner, and that if you get a body in front of him and just make good form tackles, you can limit him just like the Colts did today. So shout out, by the way, to the Colts defense for holding down the fort and keeping Derrick Henry from running over you like he's done. I believe 4 of his 5 best games or something like that are against the Colts or whatever. Or no, the Colts have allowed like 100 yard rusher 5 times since Frank Reich started coaching here, and 4 of those are Derrick Henry. So my big beef, right? So after I tackle officiating, and then I say, hey, the Colts play calling was bad. The officiating is a thing you've got to overcome. You have to be undeniable on offense, and I feel like the Colts had firepower today. Like it just felt like Pittman, there's nothing he couldn't catch and come down with and make a play out of. And the same thing for Jonathan Taylor. And if I'm an offensive coordinator and I know I have a sure-handed wide receiver that gets open and has clear rapport with my quarterback, and then I have a running back that every time he touches the ball, he makes something happen. Those are my number 1 and 2 guys touching the rock, and there was just way too many plays where it's Ashton Doolin. And no offense, I love Zach Pascal, and for the record, I love Ashton Doolin too. He does a lot. He plays special teams too. No, that's super important. So like, I don't want that people to get lost in the shuffle. I'm not mad at Colts players. Let's just start there. There isn't a single Colts player today that I'm willing to go after and say like, you fucked this up for us. You lost this game. That's out of. I'm not even. We're not even talking about that. The problem here starts like Jim Irsay. So the Irsay family, the entire the executives of the Colts are so far removed from decision making that it's very blatant. And then when you attack what the Colts are doing, you start with Chris Ballard relying on specifically Marlon Mack, Eric Fisher, who both had major Achilles injuries, and I'd argue aren't all the way back. Marlon Mack is doing what for you other than like taking up a roster spot at this point, and he definitely wanted to get traded, but nobody wanted him, right? And then when you watch him run, he's clearly not back to his old self. Eric Fisher has yet to play a complete game however, I wouldn't blame Eric Fisher. That's not his fault. I would blame the Colts for failing to what's called backfill a position, which is when you're taking on a guy that has an Achilles injury, you need to get another guy, like a draft pick dedicated to filling that position. And I feel like regardless of the rest of the season, so I'm willing to have this argument now, looking forward. I hope the Colts rattle it off because they're gonna have to. Right, 9 games left, and you're probably gonna have to win 8 in order to get to play. I'm guessing 11, 12 wins might get you into the wild card. So the Colts have to play perfect from here on out. We all know that isn't going to happen. They're not well coached. They're injured. I believe with every fiber of my being that it is a mistake to open the roof when it's sunny outside. It gives a disadvantage to pass catchers. The Colts are facing primarily a rushing team. So yes, you'd think you'd want the roof closed so your offense is more balanced than I would argue the Titans offense is, right? Titans have a leading rusher in the NFL. Not great passing the ball in terms of like statistically. And like I said, before we go after Carson Wentz for having a bad day, really upset at play calling, inconsistent play calling. If it's off script and anything happens where like you're now backed up, it's 3rd and long. There were some situations where individuals made plays, but the play call was still poor. So again, I'm when I come away from this game, I say the Colts are 3-5 because the GM bet on made a bad series of decisions on keeping, retaining, and picking up veteran talent. And then so that's your first problem is Chris Ballard. While he does draft well, made a few mistakes here that are costing you roster spots or ultimately have inhibited your offense's potential up to this point. And then you look at the in-game decision making, and again, we could really nitpick apart the whole game, but it feels like a lack of preparation, a lack of like not having worked this out. The 2-minute drill, the overtime drill. There's a lot of things going on here where it's like, yeah, we could have done something different here. Um, Specifically, one of the things I'm upset about that was really making my blood boil was like play design, right? For example, Colts come out in a 3-by-1, 3 wide receivers to the left, 1 wide receiver to the right, 1 running back. They motion, no, I'm sorry, 3-by-1 with a tight end, empty backfield, and they motion Hines across the formation to the single receiver side, and the lead blocker on third and floor on a swing to Hines is T.Y. Hilton. You see, if I'm designing plays, I want to put like Hines with blockers I trust, not with the ghost, the guy who literally like appears and then disappears. So talk about like a great nickname for someone that I really love. I love T.Y. Hilton, but I'm sort of I'm going down the path where I'm like, he really is a ghost. He's an aberration. It's that part of the life cycle of a wide receiver. You either stick and are great late, or you are slight and as your career goes on and on, you get dinged up. I mean, if you just think about, it's kind of one of the things I have had out with the guys I just got done coaching in semi-pro football. I'm just like Coach Jason Brown. So first shout out I've ever given to that man. But he said something, I heard it on his original interview with Pat McAfee. And Jason Brown is the championship winning head coach of Last Chance U, I believe seasons 3 and 4, which we've all probably watched a million times. But he said something to the effect of you know you got a bunch of guys in the NFL. These jobs just keep getting recycled, right? And again, I've said like Frank Reich. I don't feel like had the resume for this job, and I feel like the Colts chose a guy that fit profile you were looking for. And that he's still going to grow into this position. And again, I don't think anybody's getting fired here. I've said that before. I'll keep repeating that. The division's too winnable. There are no other marquee quarterbacks in your division, so that makes it winnable until the Deshaun Watson thing is figured out. But again, like Tannehill's a beatable quarterback. Mills is beatable. Lawrence is a rookie. Carson Wentz, I'd argue, is on the cusp of being elite. The Colts were able to protect Carson, so he did get some time. That deep ball has done some damage for the Colts. But like I said, it's more about balance for me. It's more about play calling, being situationally aware. For example, one of my biggest pet peeves is running the ball on third and long. Only because when it works, you're now motivated to continue to do that. Which I again disagree with doing that. And then of course, when it doesn't work, throw the ball to the stick. I mean, that's just kind of a thing. But yeah, so when I look back in this game, this was failure top to bottom. The Colts are 3-5 because they made bad personnel decisions in the offseason. That have held back the team and have kept the talent level off the field. It's kept the talent off the field. There's been also a lot of injuries. And again, this goes back to going too hard in the offseason or not going hard enough. And again, I've talked about how if there's a bad message within your organization, what ends up happening is you have guys playing that shouldn't be playing because they're too injured. You have guys not playing that should be playing and they're not that injured. And then you have these balance issues within the context of a football game where you're not running the ball consistently, even though that's been your mantra. You're not also able to pass the ball effectively and efficiently. 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions in any football game is bordering on we should have just run the ball more, right? So I think when I come away from this game, I say, man, I feel bad for my defense. I feel bad for putting my players and mismanaging a football team to the point where the Colts have to play perfect from here on out to get anything out of this season. And if I'm a football player, the only thing that matters is winning. So it comes back to being undeniable on offense and defense. And I feel like the Colts defense does enough that you can win even when the defense is having like a down day and allows 31, for example. But you can't stare down your receivers. So, right, can't stare down your receivers. A lot of people are going to make comments about Carson Wentz with the little flip. One, it almost breaks the game every time you do that because teams aren't ready for the shovel. Ask Brett Favre, ask Aaron Rodgers. It'll hit for the Colts. Teams will try to get in Carson Wentz's face. He's gonna get that flick off. There's gonna be 5 bodies on top of him, and he's gonna have blockers, and it's gonna be a touchdown. Watch. And I also want to make sure that we come all circle the wagons and come all the way back to um, one of the things that we've been talking about since Frank Reich came here is wanting to host the playoff game. And in order to host the playoff game, you need to win your division. And I think when it's like just a few years ago, not even a few years ago, a couple years ago, Jim Irsay wanted 3 championships in a row. And then just a couple weeks ago, it's nah, I want 2 in 10 years, right? And I think what's happened is the harsh realization has set in, probably across the board, right? The world is going to come to an end in the next 20 years. Much of the United States will be unlivable. I'm guessing professional sports is going to go by the wayside. So I think what the Colts are realizing is like, oh, they got this good Christian guy, head coach, and this great guy and Chris Ballard that you haven't seen in front of a camera in how long. And I think that's because nobody wants to face the music here. Again, I believe the Colts made a terrible mistake in mortgaging their future for a elite quarterback that they can't protect and they don't have the weapons for. And they don't also utilize the weapons they have effectively. And again, my first 2 questions to Frank Reich were, was Jonathan Taylor banged up in the second half? Is that why you didn't give him the ball in the third quarter? And then also, has Nyheim Hines been hurt all year? Because that was your either leading or, again, second receiver last year, and he's basically been missing from your offense all year. Other than that, the Colts are still kind of shaky, putting pressure on the quarterback. They did hit the hell out of Tannehill and damn near knock him out of the game, though. So again, it's really hard to be upset at your defense, producing turnovers, dang near knocking a quarterback out of the game. Which again, you don't necessarily want to like hurt the dude, but like you rock him a few, you get to the quarterback and apply pressure and hit him and hit him and hit him. He ain't gonna want to be there. Um, and like I said, the Colts did enough against Derrick Henry, but again, it comes back to similarly on that back end for the Colts. The secondary was unable to contain A.J. Brown, and it felt like every time a play had to be made, it was A.J. Brown for the Titans. Derrick Henry less so. So I guess in a way it's like the defense actually wasn't that great today because on one hand you slowed down Derrick Henry, a little ankle injury a little early in the game, and again you hit the hell out of Tannehill, so it's gonna be a little wonky, but yeah, I mean on the one hand you're excited that a team that lost by 9 just a little few weeks ago to the Titans was able to take this game to overtime at home, and ultimately did what you absolutely cannot do: turn the ball over. So this has been Jared with Stampede Blue. This has been your Indianapolis Colts post-game wrap. Enjoy the rest of the games this week. Great Sunday night game. We'll see you after next week's a losers bracket. I mean game. Yeah, we'll see you after next week's game.